Hey everyone, how's it going? Dr. Incompetent here, and I'd like to offer a list of 10 brutal survival games that you must play. So, these are games that I've played pretty recently and on the channel that I just think are a lot of fun, and I love sharing games with others to play, and also I love hearing from you all what you think and what games you recommend so that I can find more awesome games to play, and we can create a really great list for everyone who enjoys games in this space, and they can find games they may have never heard of or give games another look that they had glossed over. So I'm going to first define the terms of this, and a survival game for me is one where you have to handle hydration, hunger, health, combat, shelter, and, perhaps even temperature and sanity. You've got to gather, craft, build, fight, and survive. Now, a brutal survival game is one where you have to do all this, but it's really difficult, and as a beginner, you're probably going to die a whole bunch of times until you get the hang of it, and these are the games that I'd like to talk about. Now, these games are, again, only ones that I've played on the channel, and these are not like the best games of all time, because if I haven't played it, it doesn't go on the list. These are just games that I put out there that I think, hey, you should give these a shot if you're interested. I'm not going to present them in a particular order, just offering them. Now, I'm also not going to include any zombie apocalypse games like Project Zomboid, Cataclysm, Dark Days Ahead, 7 Days to Die. I'm going to make a separate list for zombie games, and I'm not going to, of course, include any chill survival games like No Man's Sky or Minecraft. I might make a separate, cozy survival game list. This is for the brutal ones where just getting a foothold and making it past even the first day sometimes feels amazing. So I'd like to start with Green Hell. In Green Hell, you start in a jungle with a watch and a dream, and there's snakes, cats, poisonous toads, ants, hostile natives, crocodiles, and just everything wants you dead. You can get infections, you can lose your mind, you can fall to your doom. Even getting food and water squared away at first is a struggle. The game is challenging throughout, and even once you feel like you're established, like things are making sense, you could still get bit by a snake or step on a spider and get set back immensely. That being said, these are all terrifying elements of the game. It's a beautiful game. It looks great. It has a really cool and mysterious story. It's got a great progression and crafting system, and the map is much bigger than you first imagined. There's even different sections and biomes to it. It feels really fantastic to get a foothold in Green Hell and to start to understand, to pay attention to visual cues, to auditory clues, so you can survive in the jungle and also uncover the mystery of, what's going on here in the jungle, trying to find your girlfriend. And it gets better as you go, in my opinion, and if you want to play this game and you're finding it difficult, I do have a beginner's guide that goes really, really far into the game if you're interested in just getting started, seeing some tips and tricks on how to craft and survive. But I just love Green Hell, and I think it's a great one, and now it's available on Steam, console. You can pretty much get it anywhere, which is a plus. Next, I'd like to talk about The Long Dark, and I mostly played story mode in The Long Dark, and you can play it just, as a sandbox or story mode, which is what I did. And this game is really, really amazing. It has a gripping story, a great vibe, and it is brutal. You will freeze to death over and over. You will run out of supplies. You will have trouble even figuring out what you should prioritize, how to stay toasty, how to get food, how to get water, how to fight, and where to go, how to explore. And that being said, it's another one where it is so hard, but once you get your own, maybe you go to the gas station or the old lady's house, and you start to get a little bit set up, and you start to feel pretty good in that first area. boy, it definitely gives you a sense of accomplishment. But the thing about Long Dark is, especially in story mode, like you make it to the next area and then it's all over again, and the challenges are new and it's even harder. But you use what you've learned, you're gathering as many supplies as you could carry, and it is, green hell is you're in this like oppressively hot jungle environment. Long Dark is like, it is a frozen winter nightmare. On top of that, it's charged with this like supernatural story that just leaves you wondering and spooked out, and it's just a masterpiece. I think Long Dark is tremendous and should be played by anybody who likes survival games. Next, let's talk about The Forest. Now, there's also Sons of Forest, which I haven't played, but I spent time with The Forest, and this was one where, it starts out kind of like BioShock. You're on an airplane, it's going down, but boy, this is potentially the most disturbing of the bunch because, you and your son, things go badly, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's got some of the most upsetting visuals, and you're going to see some creatures and things in the forest that I got to tell you what, when I was first playing it, I was like, oh, okay, I crashed, and I'm just going to try to survive, and yada, 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 and I'm on, it's a tropical, almost like, the forest, or sorry, Green Hell in its setting, and then, no, there's stuff here that you couldn't have dreamed of. And you got to go under into caves to find some good stuff to help you survive. And you are going to encounter breadcrumbs of a story that will leave you up at night. And also, really, really horrifying entities. But on top of that, though, it's a great survival game. Like, the crafting system is cool. You get to build some really nice boats and, houses. And you're carrying these massive logs and trying to pick up the pieces and just sort through the bodies and figure out what is going on this island that I've fallen down on, and I think The Forest is one where I had to again restart a few times, figure out what's going on. And something else that's hard about, at least for me, about The Forest is that you're like on the clock because it gets progressively more difficult, and if you don't make enough progress and get yourself situated fast enough, you're going to need to restart and be more efficient, which is, kind of a cool bit. But as you learn the layout, learn the island and learn, where you want to go and maybe where you want to salvage, you can start to again and again find more purchase. Just like Green Hell, I have a beginner's guide for this. I actually have one for the Long Dark as well, if you're looking to get into that game and sink your teeth into it. Of course, with all of these lists, I linked the Steam page, my Let's Plays, my guides, so you can get some more coverage to see if this is a game you might want to play, or if you do pick it up, you can get some help if you want to, get into it. Next, I'd like to talk about Stranded Deep. Now, Stranded Deep is kind of like right in that wheelhouse of Forest and Green Hell, where it's tropical, more beachy like The Forest, but it's not, at least, on the surface, just as supernatural as creepy. It's more just straight away, okay, there's horrifying sharks and elements and things and pigs that I have to fight, but you're just fighting, Mother Nature and your own biological needs like a real survival game. And it's a game, too, where until you figure out how to get yourself situated, you might need to restart a few times. I do have a guide on this one, and it's like, you need to get your water, your shelter. I think Stranded Deep of all of these is the number one where exposure is a huge concern. Like, you're not really worried about exposure and as much in any of these other ones, but in Stranded Deep, you definitely got to, even manage just being out in the sun too much, among other things. And then you have to do really terrifying things like get on a rickety raft and try to move between different islands to find success. And what's in the water is not great. You might drown a few times exploring, sunken ships and things like that. But Stranded Deep is nice because it feels like, and I'm probably wrong about this, but it feels like one of the progenitor survival games. It's much older than even many of the games on this list, and it was kind of maybe just pushing out, or at least developing the genre. And so it doesn't have all of the quality of life stuff as some of these other ones, and the controls and some things that you might expect are a little bit janky, but I still think Stranded Deep is just a really, really fun game to get into. And while we're talking about moving around on rickety boats, going from island to island, let's talk about Raft. Raft is so brutal simply by its mechanics of not explaining anything to you as a new player and just being on this little boat that never stops moving, where you've got to just frantically pick stuff up and try to survive without a real pause button or reflection or guidance. And yet, at first, I was trying to play the Raft like Stranded Deep or The Forest or something like that, and I realized it's not this kind of game. It's about the raft. It's about surviving on it, and you just gotta, roll with the punches and do what you can to be self-sufficient. I think that it is, a beautiful and unique game, given the water world aspect of it. And it's another one where, man, once you get that raft built up and you get food and water taken care of, it just feels like a real accomplishment, which is why I like these brutal survival games in general, because, I don't want them to feel unfair or oppressive, but I want them to feel like where, okay, if you figure out the logic of the game, and if you start to understand how to be efficient, what you need to prioritize, some tips and tricks, then you can make it if you play skillfully. That's what I'm going for. It's not necessarily, randomness, or it's about understanding the strategy and the skill. And I think Raft does that very, very well. It's super unique in that, you have these islands that you're just never going to see again. You just say goodbye and you just keep on, rolling or sailing on your raft, and you are hunted by a singular shark for the entire game, which just kind of like, at first it drove me crazy, but then I'm like, no, this is the threat. The game has to have a threat, and this is, the world of the game, that there is consequence for going into the water, and you need to pay for that, and you need to, deal with it and mitigate it, and it gives you measures to do that, and it's just a really fun one once you get going, just like these others. I also have a Let's Play and a guide to the Raft that I will link in the description below. Now we've been talking a lot about, more contemporary, at least the setting, survival games. Let's talk about Valheim. And Valheim is a survival game that at first I was like, oh cool, it's like an action-adventure Zelda type game. And then I died, and died, and died some more. And then I thought I'm doing pretty well, and then I went to the next biome and got wrecked. Valheim is about as unforgiving as it gets, and it really emphasizes the survival element, because if you haven't eaten, for example, your character is garbage. I don't care if you have great armor. You're going to have no health, no stamina, nothing if you don't have your food buffs going. So you're constantly, reminded of the need to have food, have a place to prepare it, also, have the different buffs, and it really introduced, which many games, Enshrouded and so on down the line, have run with, which is that 3 food buff system. It's, got these PS1 visuals, which some people can, take or leave, but I found it to be very nostalgic, and it's one, like the others, where if you beat that first boss, and things start making a little bit of sense, you get a house built, and you really feel great. You feel like, okay, cool, things are going well. But then you're like, oh, I need to move to another biome. And if you're playing on the original settings, this is a pain. You can't take your metal. You've got to go. You've got to kind of rebuild. And it just puts you back at square one. You do have some stuff to make you a little bit better at doing it the next time around, but the area is harder. And yet you get better weapons, better armor and stuff. And you just keep, getting better and going to progressively difficult biomes, sailing around, and I think Valheim is just a terrific game. I do have a beginner's guide as well to Valheim, and I have a really, really long Let's Play of it if you want to watch me die and scream and lose everything in the swamp and never get it back. These are things that happened, and yet I still came back and played Valheim because it's terrific. So that was the past. Now let's move into the future and go back with water, because water makes fantastic survival for brutal survival, and that's Subnautica. And I'm going to just bundle Subnautica 1 and 2 together. I really feel like Subnautica, the original Subnautica, is the better game, but Subnautica 2 is a really cool sequel, and it does some things that are familiar, which you really want to do again, but also iterates in an interesting way and adds a story element and some emotion that was, kind of devoid in the first game. But that first game, you just, got your escape pod, and it's time to survive. And I love how you could see the difference between something like Stranded Deep and this, where they give you some more guidance with how to survive with the PDA, and everything makes a little bit more logical sense about getting resources, scanning them, getting better, and it is a game that gives you an amazing sense of progress and exploration as you start to get, your little sea moth, and then you just get a giant submarine and you're feeling unstoppable until you see some of the most harrowing creatures that you've ever seen in gaming history, in my opinion, in the size of the Leviathans. These are the biggest monstrosities that will just make you wet your pants, in terror when you encounter them for the first time. And they, you think you're, unstoppable, and then they just pick up your ship or your mech or whatever you've got and just throw you around like a rag doll. Unbelievable. It's got a great story, it's got great music, great atmosphere, and it's just an absolute masterpiece. And it's up there like with one of the best games ever, Subnautica 1, I think. And it should not be missed. And then if you really enjoyed Subnautica, you got to play the first one before you go to the second one, in my opinion. I think going to the second one is great. I think the idea of the icy surface, the different environment, the way the stories link up, some of the quality spins that they put on doing things to help you out, and the overhaul of even how the economy of metals and technology is done, it is a nice twist as well. So I'm definitely not going to leave off Subnautica 1 or 2 from this list. Next, I'd like to talk about Don't Starve. And Don't Starve is a great Klee game where, it iterates a whole subgenre of survival games in and of itself, of this like 2D top-down survival. And now, with all the DLCs, you can, of course, play it multiplayer and such. But I played it single player, and it's one where it's got these fun, cartoony graphics, and you think, just like maybe oxygen not included or something. This is charming, and then you die. And then you die again. And then you die again, and then you find something else, and then you think you're doing well, and then you go underground and you die again. It is got that brutal loop. It of night and day cycles. I think the spookiness element, the sanity element is handled well, and it really is tremendous when you get to understand the game. And, unlike some of these, it's procedural, right? So your experience is going to be different. I suppose Stranded Deep is also, and Valheim, I guess, where your map is going to be different, but it feels like it's the most impactful in something like Don't Starve, where you're just, you get better at the game, you start to understand the game more, and you learn what to look out for as you're just running around in daylight, trying to see what resources are nearby, what biomes are nearby, and you get better and better at the game. I think it's a really, really interesting take on the survival space, and I also have a guide for Don't Starve that I'm going to link in the comments below if you'd like to get jump started on it. Next, I'd like to talk about Grounded, and Grounded is a game where I loved Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, when I was young, and so it just is basically that game with a survival element and more agency on the children. You're not really relying on parents. You are creating your own technology, and it is, boy, you talk about how the scope of the Leviathans in Subnautica affects you. In this game, when you see some of the bugs and the sites, the cans of pop and the spiders, just compare it to your own size, it is wild. It's really, a marvel of a game to look at, to play. And now there is, of course, Grounded 2. It's at least in early access as of the time of this video, which is also tremendous. I really enjoyed that, had a lot of fun getting back into it, but Grounded 1 is the one that I'd like to spend the most time talking about because it's the one I have the most experience with, and Grounded 2 isn't even done yet. I think Grounded is, again, you can play it multiplayer, and you can kind of even do different, strategies for how you want to survive, what builds you want to do, what areas you want to go to. I think that some of the things that Grounded does well is the exploration, the combat, the movement just feels really, really good. Like in some of the games, like Stranded Deep, combat is just so wonky. It's almost an afterthought. But in Grounded, it's just such a polished, cool experience. I do have a beginner's guide to getting set for Grounded, as well as a Let's Play on both Grounded 1 and 2 if you want to see some more gameplay. And then another game that I want to mention, because I do like to throw in some titles that you maybe have never heard of that are in this space, but that I still think are really good brutal survival games, and that would be Neo Scavenger. This is a game that it doesn't really play like any of these others. It's almost like a point-and-click adventure and role-playing game. And it is a post-apocalyptic game that is terrifying and brutal, and I always laugh with people when I talk about Neo Scavenger, where it's a unique experience in gaming where I've never felt so happy just to get a plastic bag so I can hold more stuff, and just to get, some junk so I can make a shoe for myself. You are like, you have absolutely nothing. You wake up from like a cryo sleep pod, and things are going real bad, and you will die again and again and again as you try to, fight looters, bandits, monsters, just animals and things so that you can survive. But most of the time it's just you need food, you need water, and some of the other people who are alive are not sane. And so it is very, very challenging, but at the same time, I think such a unique game, and I really like to just shed some light on Neo Scavenger. It's old. It's an older title. It's something I played before Steam, but it is on Steam, and you can get it there, and it's great. It's a Blue Bottle game, and even their other game that is coming out about salvaging ships is super cool as well. Now, I'm going to add a couple honorable mentions of other survival games that I think are worth trying that you might enjoy, and one of those is Icarus. And Icarus is just a straight-up survival game in the space of, the forest or Stranded Deep, in the sense that it's just a pretty straightforward, or even like No Man's Sky, but it's brutal. And I add it because it's sci-fi, and I don't have that much sci-fi beyond Subnautica on this list. But it's also an extraction-based game that you can play with different areas, and it is hard. It is cool. I bounced off. I tried to play a few times, and I think it's fun. I just kind of wasn't exactly sure of some of the loop elements, but I did have fun when I was playing it, and so I offer it as a more modern game that still gets updates, has a lot going on, and gives you that sci-fi take on a survival game. And then finally, this is a completely off the beaten path title compared to the rest of these, but I'm going to mention this indie game called Wayward, which is like a survival roguelike RPG. It's turn-based, it's top-down, it's got sprite-based graphics, and it is really, really deep. It's like Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead in the sense that it's just unbelievably deep and complex with nested UI elements and all sorts of things you can do with crafting. But it's just a really neat game that keeps getting changed. It's a solo dev, and I have a good time every time I play it and feel a real sense of progress as I get myself set up and try to figure out how to thrive on the island that you start on, and get some better equipment, desalinate some water, and maybe not die, all while trying to keep the gods of the island and the curse at bay, and not getting too aggressive with surviving. So this is my list of games that I feel you must play that are brutal survival games, and I'd love to know what you think of it. What games would you recommend in this space? Remember, if I didn't put a game on here, it might not necessarily be because I don't like it. It's probably just because I never played it. And I'm only going to talk about games that I have experience with. So that's what I'm listing. And I love to hear from you all about what games you recommend, your stories of games on this list, of why you like them, why you enjoy them, and just create a real artifact in the community for people to come who want to play a survival game. Maybe they finished, Valheim or Subnautica, and they want another game in that space, and they see this list, and they can go off and have some fun elsewhere, and we could keep iterating and suggesting games to each other. And if you recommend some cool games, I will, I'm happy to cover them on the channel and see what they're all about and explore them, and then just to create more resources for people to find a game to play and enjoy, because that's what it's all about. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Take care.